Hi, happy Wednesday, and welcome to A Walk in My Shoes. I'm your host, Dan Vasquez, and I'm so happy that you are tuning in on this live show. And we are very excited to have a very special guest, Paula J. Neal, who is an author. And Paula, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Thank you for having me, and I'm doing very well. I'm very excited to be doing this. Very excited.
We are also very excited on having you, and tell us where you're connected, and tell us where you're from, and tell us about your book.
I'm currently residing in Columbus, Ohio, but I'm originally from Mississippi. Yay!
Oh,
And the book, I became a self-published author in June of 2019. The book is titled "I'm Gonna Have a Good Day," and
awesome.
I'm very happy for it.
So we're very eager to hear about the story. I mean, where this the I'm gonna have a good day is born. How did you get the inspiration? And tell us a little bit about the story of this book.
Okay. My background is early childhood education. So I've been a pre-K teacher and director for over 25 years. And so is a story based upon children over the years that had a hard time self-regulating their behaviors when things did not go according to their plan. So this book is about a little girl named Gabby, and Gabby likes to have a good day at school, but her good days means I'm going to prank and tease my classmates. And then each time the teacher, Mrs. Beadle, attempts to correct her behavior, she balls her fist up and she screams from the top of her lungs that she's going to have a good day, but she doesn't.
Hmm.
So the book follows her journey of her having a good day at the expense of everyone else. And then there's towards the end, there's promises being made with her mom for a better school day, which lends itself to the cliffhanger that comes out next January, or I should say the sequel that comes out next January 23.
Wow. So a little bit about your story. So you start in childhood education, and then
Mhm.
were there anything that motivated you to write this book, or where did the motivation for writing this book came from?
It's it's two part. Thank you. Number one, I've always wanted to write stories, children's stories, ever since I was a child. I remember my parents buying my first typewriter. I used to be in the kitchen just pecking on the keys and pushing the typewriter back to the other side to start all over again. I know I just aged myself, but it's the reality of it. But eventually, I forgot about the whole writing dream. When you become adult, you often ask, what do you want to be? And when you say you want to be a writer, how are you going to make money from that? And so I allow people to detour me from my dream of wanting to be a children's author. And so 5 years ago, I returned to writing books. And I wanted my books to be something that was teachable to children and families. And so when I came up with the concept of I'm going to have a good day, once again, it's based upon this behavior. But one of the things I've learned over the course of about 25 years in the industry is that adults and teachers do not communicate the same language that children communicate to us when they're having their meltdowns.
Wow.
So I wanted to be able to produce a book that would teach parents and educators that when a child says, I'm going to have a good day, when Gabby is pranking and teasing people, she's having a good day. So when you tell her to have a good day and then you holler at her or discipline her for having a good day, she's not understanding that. So what I've learned is that we as educators and parents and adults have to be more concrete with children as to what a good day looks like for them to understand it because we don't speak the same language as kids.
Wow. That is such an important thing. that you're talking about. I mean, this is an issue of communication, understanding the language of children.
Hmm.
So you create this book to bridge that
Exactly.
gap in that communication barrier between adults and children, and
Exactly.
understanding the kids. That's brilliant. Now, before we get more deep into the book, I want to ask you
Thank
about
you.
something so key that you just mentioned. Um, about growing up and then giving up, many adults giving up on their dreams. You didn't. You had a dream to write, and you have fulfilled this dream of publishing your first book. Tell me about that.
Yes, I remember very candidly and very clearly as a child being interested in books. I mean, I stayed my face stayed in the book, and I wrote until like middle school, and then but then I stopped because as you enter high school, your counselor wants to know, so what are you going to study when you go to college, and and you have to focus on other things that's going to get you to college. And writing back then was not the focus of my counselor or anybody else. It's like, okay, you need to be more, that's too broad, Paula. You're very good at teaching. You love to teach. Have you ever considered being a teacher? So I love pretending to be a teacher with my other seven siblings when I was growing up. I always had to be in control. So I always wanted to be a teacher. Seven siblings. I always wanted to be a teacher. And I became a teacher, but my dream was to be an author. And I allowed people to detour me from that, but I came back to it 5 years ago. And I what happened is that when I made a decision to return to writing, I kept sending my manuscripts out to traditional publishers, and they would not communicate back to me. And instead of getting upset about being told no, because I am one of those people that does not like to be told no,
Uh-huh.
especially when I believe in something. So my attitude became, okay, I'm going to self publish. And that's what I did. So as soon as I found my illustrator for my children's book, which was in 2018, he finished it in June of 2019 and I released it. And then 2 years later, it received its first award. And I'm very happy.
Oh, congratulations. That's amazing. Could you walk us a little bit about the process? Let's say someone is watching this video and they have a similar dream to write a book
Yes.
one day. Uh, how does that process work?
Okay. Can you?
Yes, sure. The process
I'm not
of
hearing the last thing you're saying.
Okay, so the process of writing a book
The,
and being a self-author, how does that process works?
okay. Okay. The first thing that everybody needs to understand is that everyone is a writer. And I often hear people ask me, how did you become a writer? And how do I get my book published? And I'll say, well, the first problem is you have not realized that you are already a writer if you're writing. You just haven't found your audience yet. So what I first say to people is think about what genre you're trying to reach. You know,
Mhm.
if it's children's book, focus on children's book and what is the message that you want to get across in your books. If you just want a message where kids are just having fun and running through the meadows and playing with their dogs, that's fine. But with my book, I wanted it to be a teaching tool as well as something that's fun for parents and educators. So I say first just start writing, and then once you're finished writing it, test it out to your audience. So my audience were children and educators and parents. So I went to different schools throughout the districts and preschools and child cares, and I tested out my manuscript before I even published. And I was getting a lot of feedback from students on what they liked or didn't like about the book, especially if it was too long. My age range was 4 to 8. It has to be quick
Okay.
or you're going to
Yes.
lose your audience. So I did a lot of tests, a lot of screen testing, reading testing. Then I came back and did revisions based upon what my audience told me was working and wasn't working. Then I went out again to the same people and different people to test the manuscript again. Now, keep in mind, when I was testing my manuscript, I didn't have illustrations. I was I was basically just reading, which means that I had to be very animated and bring my book alive to my audience, which was awesome. And then once I settled on this is the manuscript, this is final, I sought out an editor because one thing about being a writer, we're too sensitive about our stuff. And
Hmm.
so we can't see the grammatical errors or the loss in translation of the book in general. And it's you have to find someone that understands children's book and who's an editor, and you have to pay the money to find someone to edit your book for the age group or the audience that you're reading to or selling
Hmm.
to, or trying to get across. And so it went into the hand of the editor. They did their part. It came back. I had I things that I thought was awesome. They're like, well, revise this a little bit, or we revised it a little bit for it to say this. And I had to let go of my ego at times. And once I let go of my ego and let the expert that I was paying to do the job do their job, then I was able to look for an illustrator, and he did his work. And then next thing, when he was finished, I went ahead and published through Amazon KDP in June of 2019.
Oh
That was my
wow.
process.
Oh wow. That was a good process. So from start to finish, about how long did it take you to the point you got it back in your hands, ready to go to the public?
I started back in 2004 writing the book.
Okay.
And during that 5 year process from 2004 to 2009, it involved writing the book, testing it out to my audience, the editor, the illustrator, and publishing. So within 5 years, when I made up my mind that I was going to self-publish, it happened for me with from 2004 to 2009. I'm sorry, 2014 to 2019,
Wow.
the
Wow.
5 year
So
period.
that's a 5 year period.
And during that
And,
five year period was also the rejection that I was receiving from publishers.
wow, that's amazing. And but that's not the end for you.
Mhm.
You have more plans to write the
No.
sequel, and then you're looking into a series. And what is the objective? What are you continuing to bring tools to educator for children?
Yes, the sequel will be out in January of 2023. And the sequel is built around or written around strategy. So in this book, she's bad. I'm gonna be honest. My character Gabby, she's bad. Her behavior is very bad. So I figured in the second book, I needed to use some strategies to get her where I needed her to be as far as self-regulating. And then also in the book, we see the teacher and the children helping her to get there. So now we're giving her tools versus saying, Gabby, I need you to have a good day. Well, I am having a good day, and you keep telling me that I'm not, you know. So ultimately, what I'm trying to do, because I'm already writing book number 3, I'm moving towards animation with my book series.
Oh wow, that's exciting. Now, is it difficult to write
Yeah.
a character that is not a good character, but you said, I mean, she's a bad character, or with a bad behavior? Was that hard
It's
to do?
not difficult because it's the reality.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
It's the reality. She exists. I when I do author visits at schools, I don't care if it's a elementary school or a preschool. When I go into a classroom, there's always a teacher that will say, "That's our Gabby over there." It could be a boy or girl. That's our Gabby over there. And so the teachers and the kids can relate to this book, and even the children. in these classrooms that act like her cannot see their behavior in her. They'll all say that her behavior is not okay and she's to have a better day and she's to be a better friend, but they can't see that they're acting like her.
Wow. Wow.
But that's when we come in and we help them to understand.
Now, in your personal life, did you have that teacher, or did you remember someone in your childhood that portrayed that for you?
Okay, not trying to be a goody two show, but I was one of those kids. I have seven other siblings. I'm the fourth child in my family. And I definitely have that middle child complex. And my parents treated me also like I was one of the eldest. So I was one of those goody two shoe kids in, in school because I didn't want to get in trouble and I had to be the model to my sisters and brothers and things like that. So I don't remember a person having that kind of impact on me because that wasn't Gabby wasn't me. I just remember people always putting a book in my hand and saying, read, read, since you love to read, you know, and always encouraging me. And that was definitely teachers as well. Mhm.
Children of today, because the reason I'm saying this because I believe that it is more difficult to be a child right now than there has ever been.
Mhm.
We have just walked through a worldwide pandemic, or we're walking through it. Uh, there is so much
Mhm.
isolation. There is so much information thrown at children like never before. Can you speak to that?
Mhm. Yes. Unfortunately, in our school districts, a lot of children are not even reading at grade level.
Wow.
And the problem is that especially with a lot of black and brown children, they're not reading at their grade level. And I think it's not because they don't want to, but a lot of the books, especially in the early years before they even reach elementary, are books that do not mirror their image or their life stories. So
Mm,
I think we have to get back to understanding that this is a very diverse and colorful world, and that the books that we put in front of all children should mirror the child that's reading it.
yes.
So I'll say to educators, look in your classroom, look in your library. What books are you putting in kids' hands? But equally important, look at your students. What do they look like? You know, black and brown children have joys and celebrations, just like everyone else. They have death in their family that's unrelated to gun violence. We have natural causes, you know, heck, dogs die, our cats die. They need to see everyday life experiences, joys, and celebrations and tribulations in books with kids experiencing that. It's
Mhm.
very hard for black and brown children to dream and imagine in color when they've been taught how to remove themselves from their own imagination because the books don't represent them. So if you
Mm,
want to get black and brown children to become reader enthusiasts, you have to put books that look like them and their experiences and their image and their characters and images in their hands, and they'll want to read.
that's incredible. That's an incredible point you're making there. It's so good. And and it's so important to be relatable and to understand the audience and
Mhm.
to know who you are trying to communicate. Now, as a communicator, which you are,
Right.
um, what are some of the tips that you can tell young people on how to be a better communicator? What are some of the things you've learned along the way?
Okay, get off social media. Get off social media. Stop texting. We have to sort of return to a little of the old school. I'll never forget. To this very day, I get bothered by a person if I'm in a cubicle. And if they email me, when they can just simply stand up and say, "Hey, Paula, you want to go to lunch?" Or "Hey, Paula, do you have this file?" When they email me, I'm saying, "Are you serious? Are you serious?" Um, Nowadays, when people text, the translation gets lost. And even if you want to call people and get clarity, they don't pick up. On social media, you can pretend to be whoever you are, whoever you want to be. That's not a real world.
Mm.
In order to be better communicators, we have to get back to actually communicating with each other. Text messages, social media, emails, that is not communication. It's just a way of saying, I really don't want to be bothered with you or talking with you. I just want to get my point across and move on.
Well, exactly, and especially when we know that 80% of communication is nonverbal. So, the demeanor, the body language, and that's how we really communicate. So, I totally agree with you. Um, Paula, this has been so great, and we have really appreciated your time. Is there anything else you would like to tell the audience today?
Yes, buy my book. It's an awesome children's book. I promise you. Even if you don't have children, I spoke about putting these kind of books in children's hands. You can purchase this book via paulajohnson.com, and you can donate the book to a child's school, a library, a social service agency, a hospital, anybody. So if you really want to see black and brown kids being represented and represented very well in books, buy this book. I'm going to have a good day by Paula Johnson Neal at www.paulajohnsonneal.com.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Paula. We really appreciate your time, and we really enjoyed having you and giving us your insight into
Thank you.
what you do and about your book. We wish you the best success, and we're looking forward to having you uh, come again and reading books for our kids on another shows here at CLC. So, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed this a lot.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for being with us today. We'll see you again next week around 1 p.m. at Walk in My Shoes. Have a wonderful week.